Hello again. A few years ago, the Titanfall 2 servers were compromised by hackers. The game was left unplayable for most of the player base. But then, hope emerged. The North Star client was a fan-made mod client that bypassed the server issues by using its own servers. It also provided new features like giving players the ability to create their own custom modes and games. It was a great success, and players who hadn't been able to play the game in months now returned. Players were amazed by the ingenuity of the community and the fact that they themselves could update and improve a game that the developers had all but abandoned. Everyone was happy for a while, but the underlying issue was still there, even after the official servers became playable again. People still wanted Titanfall 3, and it was obvious that Respawn and EA were never going to make it. At this point, I was making terrible Unity Titanfall tutorials, and I was contacted by a member of a group. The group called themselves Project Vanguard. They were a small team of passionate developers, working to create their own Titanfall game. I now read from the project year in review, made back in 2022. Vanguard is a game for the Titanfall community by the Titanfall community. The same community spirit that created the North Star client was now trying to create an entire game. They had concept artists, 3D modelers, map designers, music designers, and even a community server with thousands of supporting fans. So, how did it go? Well, the project was recently cancelled. I myself worked with the group for a while, but I drifted apart from them after some time. I had things going on in real life, and this was more of a hobby than an obligation. This also seems to be what ultimately killed the project. People just had other things to do. So, creating a community game is impossible, and we will never see Titanfall 3. Or will we? There are lots of games that are inspired by Titanfall, mainly by the movement. They have wall running or sliding, or wall running and sliding. You might say that not every game that has sliding is inspired by Titanfall, but every game that has free movement, mech gameplay, and call themselves Titanfall 3 are pretty much inspired by Titanfall. Now, I don't have any affiliation with these people, but as you can see, the Titanfall community still wants to create Titanfall. So there's 2 Titanfall 3 now. Huh. Well, there's actually 3 if you count mine, although you probably wouldn't. After leaving Vanguard and seeing other people create their Titanfall projects, I was inspired again and decided to give it another shot. Now, almost a year has passed and I have a lot of things to show. You see, Titanfall 3 is a game that does not exist, and yet the possibility, the idea, the dream of it captivates us. The dream is widespread out there. It's not just one person living out their fantasy of creating a bread-consuming simulator, no. It's an entire movement. Maybe there won't be one single entire community-created game, or maybe in the future, who knows. But if you get 10 different Titanfall 3, isn't that even better? Maybe one of them will be actually playable. We're not there just yet, but
trust me,
someday. For now, I'm gonna talk to you about my game. Everyone wants Titanfall 3, but what do they want in Titanfall 3? Today, I'm going to try and answer that question. Last time I made a Titanfall game, in my Project Vanguard days, I had lots of ideas about new mechanics which everyone collectively agreed were great additions that would improve the game and make for a new and refreshing take. I've taken all of that feedback into consideration, and now I have even better ideas. We can start by talking about the gunplay. I've been developing it iteratively over the past year. You might say that the animations, 3D models, and textures are simple and maybe even leaves a bit to be desired. But that's not what's important. What is important are my new gunplay mechanics and rules that I have thought about for a long time. Okay, I know we're gonna hate it at first, but just hear me out. Titanfall is a game about control of your character. You give your character precise movement instructions. You're allowed to perform impossible feats like wall running or double jumping, all to give you more freedom and control. You can also fire your weapons accurately, no matter whether you're flying through the air or standing still. With that being said, I think sometimes the weapons can be a little bit too accurate. Last time I made this game, I tried to solve this problem by turning all hitscan weapons into projectile weapons. That idea was greatly received, but I have new ideas now. Like camera lag. This means that whenever you turn, your weapon follows after a short delay. This might sound horrible at first, and like something that does not fit in a Titanfall-style movement shooter, but rather in a tactical shooter. But it's really just a more natural motion. The real benefit, however, is it gives the players more movement freedom, which I think is what the Titanfall games are all about. By moving faster, you can essentially dodge incoming bullets. The weapon raycast or projectile is fired from the muzzle of the weapon, and not from the center of the player camera. This means that if you're tracing someone moving, you will hit behind them. You can compensate for this by aiming in front of them. This will work most of the time, but the delayed motion of the weapon still leaves a bit of time for anyone to outmaneuver your aim. They only have a second, but that might be all they need. The difference is that without this feature, if someone sees you and has good enough aim, you will die unless you shoot them first. But with it, you can rival their aim not only with your own aim, but also with your movement. This allows for reducing the time to kill. If there's one mechanic that I don't like, it's health bars. It's just not natural to survive having your intestines exchanged for lead. If you want to survive, utilize the movement. Speaking of movement, I thought about all kinds of ways to ruin it, but I realized it's already perfect. I added some quality of life changes like climbing and wall hanging. My most original idea, however, is the tactical fastball. A friendly mech can now pick you up and gently toss you across the battlefield. This can absolutely not be used to grief your teammates, as they need to accept that you throw them. However, I am thinking of removing that. In fashion with my more tactical and realistic feel of the game, I also made the movement weightier. You need momentum to start a wall run. You can't just jump headfirst into the wall. And there's also an arc to the wall run, but it's balanced with my very responsive jumping. The game keeps track of your initial jumping direction, and if you double jump within a certain angle of that, you will keep your momentum, otherwise your velocity will be overridden by a standard jumping speed. This allows you to completely change direction mid-air. I also added a special strafe jump. I have no idea how it was added, but it's there now, so new movement tech, I guess. Next, we move on to the big thing. The mech. I thought for a long time about what the most important thing with the mechs are, and I figured it is that their gameplay is different from the humans, and that it serves a different purpose. I came to the very hard-won conclusion that they should be bigger and slower, but also more powerful. So how do we facilitate this further than just scaling up their mesh and giving them a bigger health bar? Well, tank steering. This just means that the head moves independently from the lower body, and that they require acceleration in order to start moving. The turret, in tank fashion, moves with a delayed motion. And even if you didn't like this mechanic on the humans, you have to admit it makes sense for the mechs to turn slower, as to avoid exerting too much G-force on the person inside. But I, of course, don't want to turn the mech gameplay into a turret section on legs. So we also need to give them some movement ability. After adding the regular dash, however, I was not content. It was too simple, and I also wanted some vertical movement to be able to attack humans using height to hide from the mechs. So I also added a North Star flight mode. But this time you can actually control the altitude yourself, and aren't limited to a fixed height that leaves you extremely exposed. I said before that the mechs need to be well protected. They are easy to hit, so they need armor. However, I dislike bullet sponges in games. Yet, tank-like enemies need to exist, but with a weakness. So I decided to give the mechs halo shields. Yes, the shields are something you shoot at until they break, meaning bullet sponge, but now there's more strategy to attacking them, with the shields regenerating after time. The shields also mean that they can have less base health, so the time to kill is faster, but you have to outflank or outmaneuver them before you try to attack, or they will run away and recover before you can make any lasting damage. I also thought about adding limb damage, but I just don't know how that would work in-game. If you shoot off a leg, then the Titan can't move, and that's not fun. If you shoot off an arm, then they can't shoot. More reasonable, but then you would just ditch your mech and become human again. Now, I'm still thinking about it, but I haven't figured out all the details yet. Anyway, I'm rambling. I also wanted more weak spots in the armor. In Titanfall 2, you can damage Titans by shooting their eye, which I like. But I want you to also be able to cause extra damage by, for example, shooting at the joints. So now there are several weak spots all over the Titan armor, which you can damage with your regular rifle. To prevent a good mech operator from staying in their mech for too long, you can just destroy their shield generator to stop it from recharging. Now we have talked about all of the gameplay, but what is the goal of the game? I have played a lot of Titanfall 2. It's a great game, but I don't want to make the same game. Mainly because I want something new, but also because of lawsuits. I thought a lot about all of the shooter genres, and unfortunately they're all hated. Extraction shooters are too intense. Competitive shooters have too many cheaters. Battle Royale is dead. But do people really just want regular team deathmatch again? Because I don't think so. The problem with Titanfall 3, the reason why it doesn't exist, is not a complex level 87 quantum hypothesis proof. No, it is very simple. It is because the game was already perfected in Titanfall 2. Like I said in the intro, I know there are more people out there creating Titanfall-like games. And the games actually look like people put a lot of effort into them, and aren't just cheap cash grabs like mine. People obviously still want Titanfall 3, but why is that if Titanfall 2 is perfect? Well, people love Titanfall 2. It is, after all, a genre-defining game. I know there's a small group of people who will play it till eternity, but most people aren't like that. If you're not planning on becoming a Movement Master G100 Kraber Lord, then you will stop playing the game after 1 or 2 weeks. It simply does not have the long-term appeal. The reason people want Titanfall 3 is because they love the gameplay of Titanfall 2, and even though 2 was perfect, they still feel that something is missing. That is why Respawn and EA made Apex. They have said themselves that Titanfall 3 would have been only incrementally better than Titanfall 2, whereas Apex was, according to them, clearly amazing. The point I'm trying to get across is that if we're going to create Titanfall 2 again, then what's the point? It already exists. So, what do people actually want in Titanfall 3? The only question that needs to be answered is, what should the goal of the game be? The gameplay is perfected, so we really only need to know how that gameplay translates into a game mode. The answer to this question is a mystery, but if that answer were to appear, then that could be the spark that unifies the community. Even though I don't have the answer, I have lots of ideas. If you want to see the game one day, and if you want yet another Titanfall clone out there to compete with the 18 other ones, then join me in my search for the answer to the ultimate question that is Titanfall 3. For now, I'm gonna crawl back into my dark pit and think. I'll see you. Goodbye.